Hello, Stefan, and thank you. We are thrilled to welcome you and also all of you Patina Nation members to our first Patina Nation member learning and development opportunity. Our goal of the nation is to help you be the best consultant you can be, whether you're working for us at Patina or for yourself or for even our competition. So keep your eyes open. Over the next few months, you're going to see a range of offerings like we have today. That's because better than anyone in corporate America, we know and we understand the challenges you face independently. So to help, we're lining up some offerings and services such as a 401k retirement plan and other benefits. And they'll be exclusive to you as Patina Nation members. Today, as you've heard and signed up for, we're excited to be joined by Byers Breet. Catherine is a highly sought after global speaker with loads of proven success in recruiting, sales, leadership, and business growth. She's helped professionals from global high-tech firms in South Africa to soldiers in Kuwait to auditoriums packed with managers and executives just like yourself throughout the United States. So I'm happy to turn this over to Catherine. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm just thrilled to be here with you and the Patina Nation today. I just want to stop for a second and call out the fact that Patina is here to help you be successful, whether it's when you're out working on assignment through them or even through their competition. I got to tell you guys, I've been in the consulting world for 20 years. I worked directly for 2 global consulting firms. I've consulted with many others, and I've never heard a consulting firm say that out loud or offer this kind of training for their consultants. So I'm excited for Patina, I'm excited for all of you, and it's just really an honor to be with you here today. So I'm going to start out today with a little story for you from my own personal experience. I grew up on the hiring side of the desk, working again for 2 global consulting firms. I was a recruiter, director of recruiting, sales dude, really responsible for finding the opportunities and getting the consultants out to work. So when I launched my own firm 12 years ago and decided to become an independent consultant myself, I was a little too big for my britches because I had been the person saying yes, no, maybe for so many years. I was a little too confident. And my first big consulting opportunity was with the CEO of a global IT consulting firm. His name was Elmer. And don't get me wrong, I didn't go in and fly by the seat of my pants. I spent 2 hours preparing for my meeting. I spoke with my buddy on the inside who'd referred me into the opportunity. But I went in feeling really good. And things were going great for the first 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then Elmer looked at me and he slid 2 pieces of paper across the desk. And he leaned back and crossed his arms and he looked at me and he said, "So, I like you. Jake said you're the best in the business, but I got a problem. This is your competition. Take a look. They both have 10 more years of experience than you, and they're $50 cheaper per hour." Well, I don't need to tell you what happened emotionally in that moment. I really almost lost my cool, but I somehow managed to plow through. I took a deep breath. I read those resumes. I glanced at them. And because I had done my homework and because I had walked through my discomfort and called my buddy Jake and said, "Jake, hey, thank you so much for referring me into Elmer. I'm looking forward to meeting with him in a couple of days. Can I take 10 minutes of your time? I'd really like to understand Elmer, your company. What are you struggling with? What do you think your recruiting organization needs me to come in and do for you?" That 10-minute conversation with Jake is the reason I managed to muddle through that meeting and win the business. And I not only won that business, even though I was less qualified in technology selection and comp, because I had the inside scoop, I was able to push through that barrier. And so I'm here today to talk with you about what I've learned on both sides of the desk, on the hiring side and then out in the last 12 years as a consultant myself. So just for giggles, in the chat, I'd love to hear from you guys. What oh my gosh moments have you had in the middle of a client meeting? Have you had anything crazy like that happen to you? I'd love to hear about it. So, and I know Stefan's helping those of you that are struggling with the technology and stuff. So While you're letting your fingers chat away with me, here's what I'm going to talk with you about today. Number one, I'm going to start out by putting you back in that executive chair. I want you to remember what it was like for you as an executive bringing consultants into your organization. Because if you can remember what that was like, everything I share with you today is going to be old information. It's just going to remind you, oh, yeah, I was worried about that. So we're going to talk about the client's biggest fears about bringing in management consultants. Number two, we are going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that executive consultants make when they go in to have sales conversations with prospective clients. And then the third thing I'll do is help you. I'm going to spoon feed you some great questions to use to really uncover why will they spend the money? Why did they bring you in? And what's the number one thing that they need you to solve? And it is up to you to ask good questions, because a lot of times, and for those of you that have been consulting for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to go in to meet with a client who says, hey, I need your help. And they haven't yet really figured out what they want you to do for them. So we'll get to that as well. All right, so I'm going to jump over here to chat and see. I know I'm not the only one who's had horrible situations. So Michael had a potential client tell him, well, our team is a bunch of Ivy League graduates, and I'm not sure that you know more than they do. And then let's see here. Anita, there must have missed a comment. Now right now we've got about 300 people on with us. And so I apologize ahead of time. I'm going to miss some of your wonderful comments and questions. That's why Stefan's here to help me grab them. So he's going to mark your questions and comments as we go and toss up the most relevant and recurring themes here. So Douglas has a comment here and said that someone he once fired joined the meeting. Oh my gosh, I've been in that situation. So Douglas had fired somebody and they were now on the hiring side of the desk. So I hope you fired that person nicely. Awkward, very awkward. And Fred had a client look at him directly in the eye and ask, why are you better than my own people? So you know what? These, at least two of your comments so far hit right at the heart of why we're here today. And I'm going to now move into this section about a client's biggest fears. Because if you understand what they're afraid of before you walk into that conversation, you can handle them a lot better. Because the emotional side of it, you know, they're never going to say to you, I'm intimidated, or I'm afraid you're going to make me look bad. But you need to be sensitive to these things. So we're going to start out by talking about those. And what I'd like you to chat with me now is, again, think back to when you were on the hiring side of the desk and you were bringing in a highfalutin, highly talented management consultant. What was your biggest fear about bringing them in to your organization? Let's chat before I give you my top 5 list. Mike, full of hot air. Brad, do they really know and understand my business? David, the age barrier. I think that's a question maybe for later if we have time. Cindy, will they deliver? John, they're a know-it-all. Laureen, paying somebody. Oh, Laureen, I don't want to pay somebody to tell us what we already know. I want to pay somebody to tell me something that I don't know. Tina's number one fear that they were going to fight them without understanding the culture. Culture. Chris, are they really committed? So, you know, there are consultants out there who make really good cash that really are not fully committed. They're consultants because they love the freedom, flexibility, and they're only kind of half-hearted into it, and that was a concern. Obviously, Tina's had that experience. So Heather, they're only willing to tell me what to do and not actually roll the sleeves up and do the work themselves. Threatened. So Seth is probably worried that they are going to threaten people on their team, and that's a reality. If you haven't thought about that yet, every single time you step into an organization, you are going to threaten somebody because either they're not performing and they're worried you're going to shine a light on that, or they're just afraid that you're going to run circles around them. So, so much of what we're going to talk about on the webinar today is the soft stuff. And again, this is all stuff that you know, and throughout this webinar, you're going to say, oh yeah, of course, But the trick is to remember it when you're going into that next conversation. All right, so thank you for sharing. Keep the comments coming. Biggest fears. Here's my top 5 list of what I've seen in the last 20 years. Again, both from the hiring side of the desk and trying to win deals myself. Number 1, you won't deliver. Your resume looks great, you talk a good talk, you come in and you don't actually get the work done. And kissing cousins to that is that you're going to come in and dramatically go over budget and miss the deadlines. You're all executives. You've been on the receiving end of that. And I meant to check the latest stats on failed projects. But when I was selling IT consulting services, the numbers were in the 60 to 70% failure rate. Billions of dollars that get wasted on projects that either never go in or go significantly over budget. So yeah, they're worried about that. So make sure when you're preparing and entering your next conversation, you're focused on clearly and concisely demonstrating your commitment to their success and their budget. You know, you got to make, and then number 2, forcing your agenda and your solution. You guys have talked a lot about that in what are your biggest fears. You know, it's that culture fit. It's that sort of bull in a china shop. Number 3, over-architecting a solution. So we've all seen this over and over and over again, right? The budget's 30 million and, you know, a management consultant team comes in and they say, oh, yeah, we can do that. And then 1 month in, they're proposing a new solution that busts that budget by 10, 20%. And then before you know it, you're up at 60 million bucks. So over-architecting a solution. It's like, you know, Collins, I actually took my car in to get it fixed a couple of weeks ago. One problem, I wanted them to solve that one problem. I came back with an estimate that was like $3,500 for things that were nice to have, but I didn't really need to have them done. But I don't know this, I'm not an auto mechanic. So I went back in and I asked to speak to their lead mechanic. And he went upstairs with me away from the boss. And I said, walk me through this estimate, help me understand which of these are gotta do's and which of these are nice to do's. And he looked around and he said, okay, you've been doing your homework on the internet and you've discovered that these 3 things are gotta do right now. The rest of them are nice to have. And that's the third concern, is that you'll over-architect a solution based on their budget, their timeline, and their other priorities. Number 4, this is getting into that soft side. Some of your clients are going to be a little bit nervous, especially if you have more experience than them. If you have an Ivy League degree, there are lots of reasons why people get nervous and threatened and intimidated. And so just be sensitive to that. Because the reality is you could take their job. You know it and they know it. And then fear number 5, and I didn't see any of this come up in the chat, but there's also a fear that you'll never leave, right? It's kind of like if you go to a shrink to say, hey, I got problems with insomnia, and then 3 years later you're talking about your dear Aunt Edna. And I've been there. I worked for 2 global consulting firms, and their agenda was, what can we do to extend this project? What can we do to tack on a new project? They wanted their consultants to stay in there for 3, 5, 10 years. And I had consultants that stayed for years on end. And a lot of them were great and were doing really important work. But your client needs to hear from you language like, I'm going to get this done for you. And it's early and I can't give you a firm estimate, but I'm thinking we can probably get this done in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. So they're afraid that you will never leave because you'll get your hooks into them and you'll create situations where they can't live without you. All right, so those are sort of the top 5 fears that I hear over and over and over again from hiring managers. This is really what they're afraid of, that whole bull in a china shop. Now, this, I wish I'd taken this picture. I once was on safari actually with Stefan in South Africa, and a bull elephant came charging at us, running down our car, and we had to back up and zoom away. Not a pretty situation. And I bet every single one of you has brought in a consultant that felt to your team like a bull in a china shop. Maybe they didn't feel like it to you, but everybody on your team felt like that. So this is a concern. They're worried about it. But speaking about client fears, I gotta share a story with you. When I was first in the consulting world, I got a job as a recruiter. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I apologize to any of you that had to deal with me. And I bump into people periodically that say, I remember you. Yeah, I was a rookie. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I gave terrible interviews. And all I knew how to do was take the client requirements, check the boxes, interview as best I could, and send them off. So I had an opportunity to fill a position for a program manager at a bank, a national bank, and it was a huge software implementation. They were already in the weeds, they were already over on time and budget, and we really needed to bring in a heavy hitter to come in and turn that project around. And I found somebody, and I thought he was fantastic. And so I essentially said to him, you've got the job. You just need to go meet John. It's the final piece of our hiring process, and then we'll get you out to meet with the client. Can you do that? Great. Well, I sat in on that interview with my perfect candidate and John and watched everything fall apart because John could see that the guy had the right experience. He was worried about the cultural fit. And so he looked at him at one point, he got him really relaxed. And then he looked at him and he said, so Tom, clearly you've got the experience to get in and save the day. Not a question at all. But you know, I happen to know the client can be really difficult some days. And one of the vendors involved in this project also very difficult. So why don't you give me, tell me a time when you had to deal with a difficult client or vendor. And then John just sat back in his chair and I watched Tom throw the whole thing out the window. He actually shared a story about a time when one of his vendors disappointed him so badly that he walked in and pretended to be immigration on their plant floor. And he roared with laughter. He thought it was so funny. And John roared with laughter and then promptly walked him out 5 minutes ago and looked at me and said, So be careful when you get too comfortable in a client meeting. That can happen too. Listen, we all have skeletons in our closet and we've all made mistakes and done silly things. You don't want to share all that in a client meeting. All right, so given all that, again, rookie recruiter trying to understand what my clients were looking for, why John and Terry and Kate kept dumping my perfect candidates. And one of the senior VPs took me aside and said, Catherine, this is what we need to protect against. Our clients fear that these consultants are going to come in and tell them that their baby is ugly. And your job is to make sure that you hire people who can do that with a smile on their face and leave their clients feeling whole. So anyway, I share that because it just really resonated with me. And finally, the light bulb went on about why so many smart, talented consultants were getting kicked out of the hiring process. So common client meeting mistakes. And as I said, chat away. Maybe what we should do is stop right now. Stefan, do we have any questions that you think I should take right now about client fears, questions or comments? Should I take a quick little break here? I'll scroll through there's an endless spectrum of fears, yes. So we categorize into 5 root fear issues and plan our fear breakers in advance. I love that. So I think Ted is saying that this is his strategy for winning the projects is you really can't know what all of their fears are. So he categorizes into some buckets and plans the fear breakers. Yes, and so as I talk about, and in the consultant's meeting guide, which you're going to get that as a free download at the end of the webinar today. In that client guide, I actually talk to you about how to prep for a meeting. And one of those items is to anticipate their fears. When you do your homework on the company, the industry, the people, and you look at how your background and experience matches that, it's going to be pretty obvious to you about what some of their concerns might be. So I love it. In addition to questions and comments, please do what Ted just did and share your best practices. Would love it. All right, so now I'm going to run through the top 10 mistakes that senior consultants make in those high pressure client meetings. And here they are. Actually, I'm going to stop myself. I'm going to ask you guys, before I blather my top 10 list, what mistakes have you seen people make? We've already talked about the bull in the bull china shop, those kinds of things. Are there other mistakes that people have made when you were on the hiring side of the desk. And while you're telling me about the biggest mistakes that you've seen management consultants make, I'm going to take a question here about the baby. So apparently, probably with Deepak and a few others, I flew by the baby analogy a little too quickly. What I mean by that, baby, as a consultant, you are coming in and you are actually a guest in their house. And they have maybe a pet project, maybe an acquisition that they're in the middle of right now, and they are super excited about that acquisition. And you take one look at the financials and say, this is a disaster. This is the stupidest acquisition you could possibly make in your business right now. You need to think about how you deliver that news. You have a responsibility to deliver the news. It's just a matter of how will you deliver that news, because to them, that is their baby. And whatever mess you're stepping into, you just have to remember that they grew that baby probably for 9 months or longer, and they're very proud of it. So that's not just for the executives that hire you, but also everybody on their team. They are emotionally heavily invested into the world that you're stepping into. So that's what that analogy means about coming in and telling people that their baby is ugly. All right, so mistakes that you've seen management level consultants make. Chris, treating the client like they don't know anything. Assuming the client has a broader, so this is really great. So Chris says, on the one hand, a mistake is talking to the client like they don't know a thing. And then Cindy, on the flip side, assuming that the client knows more than they do. You may be dealing with a client who really doesn't have that broad perspective that you do. Excellent points. Not listening enough, and therefore providing incomplete information. Julie, being rude to my internal customers and clients. Man, that is a big one, and it's actually on my top 10 list. Being rude to even the receptionist is a deal breaker for most decision makers. Paul has a real world example. A consultant told the CEO that he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's a way to win a project. Let's see here. Colin, unable to adapt the approach or conversation on the fly. Yeah, if you go in too well prepared with a solution, if you assume you know what they need, that can get you into some real hot water, because then it can be really difficult to pivot and shift the conversation as needed. Because what's going to happen is, as you know, you're going to uncover light bulbs in the conversation that they didn't share with you, that you didn't learn from your champion on the inside. And Mary wants to know who walks in and is rude. Mary, you would be shocked at the number of people who treat receptionists like dirt. Most of them aren't even aware that they're doing it. They're so caught up in their head getting ready for the high pressured meeting that they forget to connect with the support staff, the receptionist, the customers, and the other team members. So most of the time it's an innocent mistake, but you'd be shocked. It happens all the time. Am I going to share this chat? They are pretty good. So Stefan, Tina has a question. Are we going to share the chat insights? This webinar is being recorded, and so you're welcome to go back and watch the chats again. I don't think there's a pretty way for us to share all the chats with you. You're right, there are some great insights. Keith, not knowing when to shut up. I'm kidding. He said not knowing when to be quiet. And again, I can tell you that most people, when they talk too much, or they're a bull in a china shop, a lot of times it's because they are excited, they're passionate about coming in and doing the work and solving a client problem, and they forget to breathe, and they forget to look up and look at the person they're talking to. And so a lot of times these mistakes are people just get carried away. And that's why we're talking about it today, to remind you not to get carried away. All right. And VR says being rude is not an innocent mistake. That's true. Well, then that's true, and it is a pattern of behavior, and that's why over and over again, I cut people for it. Because here's the thing. When you're going in for a client meeting, and make no mistake, that client meeting is an interview. When you're going in for that, the client knows you are on your best behavior. That's as good as it gets. And so when you make mistakes like that, it does give a window into your personality. It's true. All right. Yeah, they are. They're Karen, these are overall good sales strategy. You are absolutely right. And as I said, You all know this stuff. Today is a refresher for you and hopefully a punch list that you can use to prepare yourself before you go into your next conversation so that you just remember not to make any of these big boo-boos. So let's talk about the boo-boos. Your experience is your advantage. Make sure they know it without shoving it down their throat. So here are 15 of the biggest mistakes that senior consultants make. Not experienced ones, but people who are just getting into it often make these. Okay, so number one, not preparing. Here's the deal. If you add up the hours that it took for you to win this opportunity, it's hours and hours and hours, potentially weeks or months of chasing a client to get the opportunity to come talk to them. You can afford to take an hour or two to prepare effectively for that meeting. And this is a mistake that I see executives make a lot because you are so good, you are so talented, you've solved so many problems that you can think, oh, I can wing it. I'm great on my feet. I understand their business. I used to sell against them. I'm just going to wing it and go in and see how it goes. Huge mistake. So don't make that mistake. Number two, we already talked about treating the receptionist and the staff like dirt. 86% of companies, according to a big survey by JobVite, said that that is a deal breaker. And I can see that it is for VR also. Number three, failing to connect. If they don't like you, they won't hire you. And so if most of you are achievers, you are competitive achievers, which means you like to get straight to the point. Go in, solve the problem. Are you going to hire me or not? And I just want to caution you against that. Even if it's just 30 seconds of rapport building, you need to relax, help them relax. And quite frankly, in those first 30 to 60 seconds, they are subconsciously making a decision. Do I want to work with this person or not? Do I want to invite them into my work family? Is this somebody that I'd hop in the car or fly somewhere with? Like, this consultant's going to be in my world. Do I like them? So that whole likability factor is something a lot of people skip and forget about. You can't forget about it. Number four, assuming your resume will speak for itself and failing to translate your past experience. So here's an example. Let's say you've got 30 years of incredible success in the financial services industry, and you have an opportunity to go into the healthcare industry, and you know you can get in there and do this in your sleep. Whoever chooses to bring you in and have a conversation, intellectually, they probably know that you can make the leap, but they're concerned that you're not going to be able to translate from one industry to another. Your resume doesn't tell them that you've done that before. They need you to illustrate that you're able to make that jump from one industry to another. And that comes down to a language. It comes down to listening. It comes down to well-prepared questions. So it's about understanding that you got the interview because of your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your reputation, but you are going to win the business. Once you're in that room, your resume doesn't matter. It's about you translating your past successes into their world. Number five, this came up in the chat, assuming that you know more than they do. You can't assume it, very dangerous, and they don't like it very much. Number six, selling a solution too soon. And I actually think one of you brought that up in the chat, is pitching the solution before you really understand the problem. Number seven, pretending you know everything. We've already covered that. Eight, we've covered this as well, talking too much and interrupting too much. So if you're fresh into consulting, and this is the first time that you've been on this side of the desk, I want you to pay attention to eight, because if you've been a CEO, CFO, COO, VP, whatever you've been, you're accustomed to giving orders. And that's, you're going to have to shift that a little bit and rein it in a little bit, because they don't want to bring somebody in who's going to bark and tell them what to do. They want to bring somebody in who's going to walk alongside them. And even if you're making the recommendations that they say yes to, they have to say yes. Number nine mistake is failing to close the deal and talk about next steps. So you can be in the middle of a meeting and it's obvious to you that you are the right choice. It is clear as day that you can start tomorrow, solve their problem, save them millions of dollars, and get them home to their wife and kids or husband and kids by 5 o'clock at night, that doesn't mean you won the business. You have got to ask what we call closing questions, test the waters, see how they're feeling about you. Do they see any reason why you're not going to be the right person to come in and get it done? Are they ready to make that commitment? Do they have the money? So in the next section, I'm going to talk about great questions. And toward the end of the list, I've got some sample closing questions there. You have to ask when you're face to face with them. You've got to ask those closing questions. All right, so Paul's got a comment here. Great. So Paul's statement question is, he's been in a few, fortunately very few situations where he knew in the first couple of minutes the chemistry was not there, which means Paul knew there's no way he could succeed if they even hired him. Beyond walking away, is there anything that can be done? Well, I'll tell you what I do. When I'm in it, you're right. You know it within the first 2 to 3 minutes. And when you know that it's just not a good fit, you're not going to enjoy working with them. You're not going to be successful. I don't walk away 5 minutes in, but I start asking questions to try to uncover what they're looking for. I'm looking for an out. I'm looking for a graceful out. And so I'll skip to my closing questions and ask things like, so out of curiosity, what else are you looking at to get this done? What have you tried in the past? What are your potentials? What are you really looking for in a consultant? How would you like this person to show up? So I try to ask 3 or 4 questions that will open up that I'm not the guy for the job. And then I'll just zero in on 1 or 2 of those things so that I can exit gracefully. If that doesn't work, then I will kind of cut to the chase and just say, based on our conversation, it feels to me like you're looking for somebody who will boom, boom, boom. And I'm not sure I'm that right person, but I might know somebody for you. So my favorite thing to do is to refer them to somebody else who can get that job done, who may or may not. But if it sounds like it's going to be a disaster, of course, you don't want to refer a friend into it. But I certainly don't sit there for an hour, and I don't think you should either. All right, so Robert wants to know, how do you feel about a client bringing in consultants from competing firms to listen to your analysis, strategy, recommendations, planning, and next steps? How do I feel about that? When I'm on the receiving end of it, I hate it, and I think, here we go. But it happens, and it's going to happen to you again. The good news is you know who your competition is, and you know who the biggest challenger is in the room. So honor it. When they bring in a consultant from a competing firm, it tells me that that consultant is doing a great job. When I'm in that situation, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. And I say, so, Sandy, great to meet you today. Tell me a little bit about what you've been up to here. So I direct my questions at Sandy, engage her in the conversation. I want to learn, what is she doing here in the organization? And then I ask this question. So and I usually laugh a little bit, and I said, I can't help but ask, why am I here today? Why aren't you bringing somebody in from your firm? And then I shut up and listen. And that's where you're going to discover that Sandy is a rock star at a consulting firm that doesn't have any other rock stars. Or, there are lots of reasons why that can happen, but just call it out, because it's obvious that you're competing firms and that other firm should be able to deliver the goods. Clearly they haven't. So just talk about it. Remember, they're humans too. And if they bring somebody like that into the room, they expect to have a conversation about it. All right. So common client meetings mistakes, failing to close the deal. And then number 10, it is easy to forget that you're not their only choice. It is easy to assume you're their only option. And when you're in a meeting that's going really, really well, you're hitting on all cylinders. The chemistry is there. You had a great conversation with their customer in the lobby, and you are just feeling like you are in like Flynn. Be careful. Because, and some of you know what I'm talking about, I am a gracious interviewer. So even if I have my number 1 candidate sitting in the wings, I'm going to make sure that I give a great experience to every person that I meet, because it's about my company brand, it's my reputation, and it's just who I am. So you have to be careful never to assume you are the only option. All right, so let's jump into sample questions. And I'm going to run through these quickly because then I want to jump into your comments and your questions because they're fabulous today. How to uncover their biggest needs. Remember, no matter what it's called, whether it's let's grab a cup of coffee, let's meet for dinner, hey, I'm golfing tomorrow, do you want to come along? I don't care where you meet your prospective customer. Every second of that conversation is really an interview. They're checking you out. They're trying to figure out, do you have the goods? Will they enjoy working with you? How are you going to get along with their team? They are figuring out if you're going to be a good fit for them. The key is not the will to win. Everybody has that. The key is the will to prepare. This is from Bobby Knight. So he's a retired college basketball coach, and his teams won 902 NCAA Division I college basketball games. So I think he's really onto something. And it's about that preparation. So before I run through my sample questions, I'm going to toss it over to you because here we are. We've got a webinar room packed with smart, successful consultants. What is your number one way to prep for your client meetings? Let's see here. I see Deborah says great insights. Wonderful. Yeah, not just from me, everybody else too, right? Heather researches the company to see, Heather researches the company, and the first thing she does is get in there to see if she has any friends on the inside. Yep. So I look for friends on the inside, and if I can't find any friends on the inside, I look for friends on the outside. So I've gotten the skinny on companies from people that worked with the CEO 5 years earlier. Their personality hasn't changed all that much. In fact, let me talk about Elmer again for a second, if you guys want a good chuckle. So this was what, 10 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago. And Elmer, he's a phenomenal leader. In fact, I almost thought about giving up my firm to go work for him. And he's an infectious leader. And one of his favorite things to do was to run around with a camera. Every time he flew around to a different office, he would interview employees and then throw those, YouTube style interviews up on the intranet. And it was this ongoing thing, and people absolutely loved it. So Elmer was into cameras, and he was into casual, and he was into personal. So when I left that meeting with him, and we'd agreed on a price, and he said, I'll give you my decision the next, by the end of the week. It's looking pretty good, but you got some stiff competition. I'll be in touch. Well, I went home, and I actually said to Stefan, who, if you haven't figured it out, business partner, husband, I said, Stefan, I really want this project. And he's like, what do you got to do to win it? And I said, well, this, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I think if I sent him a little video as a thank you and nailing the 3 things that I know I can do for him, I think I'd win the deal. And he said, all right, let's do it. Set up a studio, threw me in front of a camera. And it took me about 3 hours, but I cut him a little 60-second video that I sent. And I had lunch with him a couple of years ago. And he said, oh, yeah, that hands down, that's why you won the deal. You got me. You understood our culture. So dare to have a little bit of fun, and your friends on the inside can really help you. All right, so thank you for that. Now let's look at your other way to prep. Nancy has impact them down the road. So Nancy's looking forward to potential threats to their business that could impact them down the road so that she can weave those into the conversation, make sure they're thinking about that. Culture and history are so important, so Chris makes sure he knows some of the company's key stories. It can be especially important for a private company. Absolutely. Man, people are tied to their formation stories. It means a lot to them, and it says a lot about how they run their business. Kathleen reviews company profiles, their press releases. What are they saying about themselves? Board of directors, leadership, performance record, annual report at the very least. Absolutely. Customers, Bob, such a great point. I do this too. So if you've got friends at their customers, call them and talk to them about that company. Fabulous, fabulous insights. All right, so those are all great ways to prep. Before I give you my list, I'm going to remind you guys that you are working for one of the finest consulting organizations in the US of A. And it's Patina Solutions, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know Patina over the last few months. And so here's the deal: If you are chasing an opportunity with Patina and somebody like Jody Brendel or someone else on the Patina team brought the opportunity to you, listen to them. They are sales professionals. They did all the heavy lifting to find the opportunity, to qualify the opportunity, to package the opportunity, and to find you. Ask for their advice. Shake, shake the mantle and say, tell me what I need to do to win this deal. And listen. And they aren't going to have all the answers, but man, they're going to have some really good ones. So always, always, always listen to your sales reps, your recruiters, whoever you're dealing with. When you have a go-between like that, it can really, really make a tremendous difference and give you a huge competitive edge. All right, so good questions for your first client meeting. And again, at the end of the webinar, you're going to get an opportunity to get my slides and my client meeting guide. And all of these sample questions are in that client meeting guide, so don't feel the need to furiously scratch notes. All right, here we go. I'm going to run through them quickly. Number one, opening up the conversation. What's going on? How can I help you? Why'd you bring me in today? Number two, what's the main reason you wanted to meet with me? So there are lots of different ways to get at this. What you're trying to figure out is, why did they bring you in? Now, if I'd asked that question of Elmer, he would have said, well, and I actually asked that question later on after he shoved those resumes at me. And I said, so you're right. They are highly talented, more experienced than me. Why are you talking to me? Great question, because all of a sudden they're going to start selling you on why they want to hire you or something else. All right. Number three, what's your number one priority for this fiscal year? They may be bringing you in to solve a problem that actually isn't their number one priority, and that's important for you to know. Number four, what is the standing in the way of you achieving that? Number five, what is the number one thing you'd like me to fix or do for you? And you might be surprised by what they come back with here. And again, I want to remind you, this conversation that they're having with you might be the first time they've actually stopped to really dissect the problem. So you're going to be helping them, and they're going to be thinking on the fly a lot of the time. And that's okay. You need to figure this stuff out before you sign on the dotted line. Otherwise, you may be stepping into a hornet's nest. All right, number six. Now, number six is about impact. You want to test how much is it going to cost them if they don't bring you in, and how much money are you going to make for them if they do bring you in. And in your client meeting, you want to discover, you want to talk numbers. Where are they bleeding? How much are they bleeding? And what's it going to do for them if you can solve that problem? So that's what number six is about. Number seven, testing the competition. What have you already tried to solve this problem, whether it's external or internal? Maybe they just threw out another consulting firm. Maybe Sandy, that other consultant that they brought in, is no good and they can't figure out how to fire her. I've been in that situation where they bring me in to help the bad consultant understand how bad they are because they don't like firing consultants. I mean, crazy things happen. So what other options are you considering? You can't be afraid to ask about the competition. Number nine, this is where you're trying to figure out, can you be successful? Who will be my key sponsor, my key contact on this project? It may or may not be the person that you are talking to, and they may plan on giving you a key sponsor that is too low level for you to get the job done. These, you're not just trying to win the project, you're trying to evaluate whether or not you want the project and whether or not you can be successful. Number 10, you're starting to uncover the political hot seat. Who are the people that are going to sabotage you? Is there anything or anyone that might stand in the way of success or resist this change you're trying to implement? You just acquired this company. They're sexy, they're new, they're innovative. Who on your team is going to be really concerned about merging with this company? Who do I need to help come along? Are there people on your team that you don't think are going to survive this acquisition? Those sorts of things. Number 11, you're going to circle back and test the waters. What's the pain? Will they spend the money? If you don't fix this now, how long can you stay with things as they are? And you may be shocked to realize that they say, oh, we could live this way for another year. Well, that's an indication that they are not in a hurry to hire you, and you better fill your pipeline with some other opportunities. Number 12, you got to talk about money. What's your budget for this project? And if the answer is, well, we don't know yet, you could walk away. You could carve out a little project where you help them figure out a budget for it. You really want to know that there's been some money earmarked, that they have the money to spend on not just you, but the other things that are going to be necessary to get the project done. If they haven't earmarked any money yet, then their commitment is really low. And you can be polite and say, give me a call when you're really serious and ready to go. Number 13 is where you're going to start to ask, do they like you? Do you have what they're looking for? There are lots of different ways to ask this. How do you feel about my ability to get this done? Do you have any concerns about, me coming in and getting this done? Am I the right guy for the job? Number 14, this is where you need to know if you're dealing with a decision maker. Even at the executive level, you may be dealing with a VP of sales who doesn't have the power to bring you in. She's got to get approval from the CEO. I've seen it. So you've got to make sure you're dealing with a decision maker. And you need to understand if they're going to go consult with 3 people on their team. They may want you to meet 2 key members of their team before they make their decision. And that's important for you to know that those team members have significant influence over the decision maker. And then number 15, when will you make your decision? These aren't written in stone. These are guidelines. This is a launch pad for you. You're smart enough and experienced enough to take these questions and make them your own, but it'll give you a place to start, something to think about. And then I have 5, so you start with 10 or 15 really good, solid questions. Then you've got to create at least 5 additional questions that are specific to their need, based on your research, specific to their number one client, product, service, specific to their client. You get the idea. And again, these are all in the client meeting guide that we're going to give you as a freebie today. Your questions are designed to showcase your skill. So by asking smart, insightful questions, that alone is going to demonstrate that you've done your homework, you're serious about coming in and solving their problem, you understand at a high level what they're up against, and you're the gal to get the job done. So you want questions in there that do showcase your expertise. If you're struggling to craft good questions, what's worked for me is to pretend I'm already on the job. What do I need to know to be successful? So that's a way to help you think about, what do I need to know before I step into this mess? All right, so on that note, what is your favorite question to ask in client meetings? I know you must have some. What does success look like? Absolutely. Yep. So if I start this project for you in the next 2 weeks, what do I need to do? So that 3 months from now, you're saying, dang, am I glad we brought Tom in? Yep. What does success look like? What keeps you up at night? Yes. So as you're trying to uncover their number one pain, what keeps you up at night? James, a really good open-ended question. Tell me about the players involved. That's a really nice softball open-ended question to get them airing all their dirty laundry. And I'm about to circle back to comments you guys have already made about making sure you listen, and talk just a little bit. In fact, I did put a slide in. Here's the difference between a rookie consultant. The blue is the listening and asking questions, and the red is talking and offering ideas. And a rookie talks a lot. They get nervous. They're trying to show their prowess. They're trying to impress. And the seasoned consultant listens a lot, asks a couple of really good questions, and mostly lets their clients talk. All right, so back to your chat, sharing your favorite questions. John says, how do we work together successfully? Great question. Jim, what are the barriers to success? Ray, and I alluded to this when I talked about their biggest fears, but Ray has absolutely hit it between the eyes. How will you personally benefit from this project? See, the thing they're afraid of is that you're going to ruin their career. If they bring you in and it doesn't go well, you just might ruin their career. What they're hoping is that they bring you in and they look like a hero. I actually had a client in Texas a couple of years ago that was bringing me in, and I asked him a question like that, and he said, well, you're really my Hail Mary. I've already been put on notice that my job is on the line, and he was the senior executive in the Texas market, and he's telling me, I'm his Hail Mary. Whoa, talk about pressure. And I probably should have walked away at that point. I delivered as promised. He got fired. Was it a success? Doesn't feel like it to me. But there was no way I could save his job. He was already on the way out. The board of directors was trying to figure out how to get rid of him. All right, so more favorite questions. What is preventing your organization from addressing the key problem? Great. Who are the stakeholders most affected by this project? Similar to who are the key contacts? Who are the sponsors? Remember the acronym Douglas says, WAIT. Why am I talking? I love that acronym. So when you're blah, 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 and you think, uh-oh, why am I still talking? Wait, why am I still talking? How can I get a gold star on this project? VR, I like you. You're not rude and you like to have a little bit of fun. Love it. What's your time frame for this project? Key stakeholders, listen more, talk less is a great slide. Yeah, it's really about discovery. Your goal when you go into a client meeting is to learn things that you didn't know coming in the door. You want to learn things you couldn't find out online, you couldn't find out from your friends on the inside. You want to uncover things that are aha moments, epiphanies, really important discoveries so that you can go in and be successful. Awesome, fantastic. All right. So I'm going to move along here because I hope you have some questions and some more things on the issue of closing the deal. Remember, first of all, speaking of polite, I don't care how much somebody said to me, hey, I've got an hour for you. I still check in on how are you doing on time. Every time I sit down with a client, I say, hey, by the way, we planned this meeting to be an hour, but how are you on time today? Because as you all know, things can blow up. Prime example, Mike Harris, your fearless leader at Patina, was planning on being here with Dan and I today, and he's stuck on a plane or in an airport somewhere. So things happen. Just check in and say, how are you on time? And if you're in the middle of a meeting and they set an hour and they start to get, scissor leg, they get distracted, just check in and say, gosh, Sue, you told me you had an hour today, but I know how work is. You want to get out of here a little bit early today? Just check in. But when you're ending the meeting, you've got to close the deal and ask some of those final testing questions. How are you going to make a decision? When are you going to make a decision? Do you already have the budget set aside for this project? How do you feel about me? Those sorts of things. You've got to test the waters. Who's my competition? How are you going to make your decision? You got to do that and discuss next steps. Where do we go from here? What are the next steps? All right, key lessons. And then I'm going to take one or two questions, and then I'm going to toss that baton back to Dan to wrap it up with us today. So key points that I hoped to share with you today. Number one, I know what it feels like to have a really exciting opportunity and lose your confidence. So number one, I want you to remember your experience is their advantage, and you are going to get in there and do some really incredible things for them. So do whatever you need to do to remind yourself how good you are. Number two, show them in the way you show up, the way you prepare. Don't tell them. Number three, preparation is everything. Number four, listen more, talk less. And number five, remember to close that deal. So beyond the day, again, when you get the survey, please give your feedback. As Dan said, this is the inaugural launch of Patina Nation and the beginning of some really cool things in store for you. It's really important to them that they get your feedback about what you liked and disliked about the webinar today. So do the feedback. I also want to remind you, their survey is there, and on that same page, there's going to be a click to download the slides and a click to download the free client meeting guide by Arbez. We are doing another webinar together, Arbez and Patina, late fall or early fall, called Unforgettable Introductions. And I don't know about you, but when I meet somebody for the first time, I want to make sure I make a good impression and that I'm memorable. So when they have a burning need a year from now, they remember me. And that's what that webinar is all about, is helping you make a great first impression and be memorable. So you are the first person they think of when they have a problem. and the first person they think of when their friend says, I need some help. That's really the secret to consulting, is being known for what you do really, really well. All right. So it's 12:57, and I see your comments and questions are coming through. Fantastic. I am thrilled to have been here with you, and I'm going to actually go off camera, and I'm going to ask Dan Zodis, Marketing Director of the Patina, to come back on and just take it away and bid you all farewell today. By the way, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm Catherine Byers Breet. Would love to stay connected with you on LinkedIn. Thanks so much, everybody. And there's Dan. Hello, Dan. Welcome back.
Thanks, Catherine. Great job. We really enjoyed your thoughts and energy today. You shared some truly sound advice. And thank you to everybody in the Patina Nation for not only joining us, but for engaging today. From coast to coast, it was fun watching literally hundreds of you take part in this call. So like Catherine asked, please do complete your survey. That'll give us good advice on what else you might be interested in, so we can give you more opportunities in the future to help you be the best independent consultant you can be. So until we hear from you, we wish you a great day, a great weekend, and nothing but success as an independent leader here in Patina Nation. Thank you.